wasn't popular at his time. Mandela was a terrorist. People just have this kind of weird, like the only ever protesters passed. And there's a real kind of, I think people forget that those people went against the grain of their time, not with it. So of course protesters are going to be speaking against the grain of their time. They are going to say things that are challenging, that are confronting, that actually challenge the way that people think. And that's not a fault. That's our reason for being. That's how it progresses. And critical thinkers come out and go, hang on, yeah. This doesn't seem to work very well. I think we should do it another way.
Yeah. So they're glorifying suffragettes, and then outside
I was there, that was my second arrest.
The cyclists.
The irony wasn't lost on me.
I couldn't believe it. And on the BBC there's nothing.
Absolutely no. I mean, I was tweeting, I ran our Olympics campaign actually about the Olympics, and you've got Atos, and it was like the world's worst corporations all descended. Yeah, it's all the bad guys basically got together and said, let's have a party, and you can pay for it. And literally, I was covering it. I wasn't even protesting that night. I heard that staying at B&B on the boat road and following the critical mass bike ride on Twitter, and so I better go and cover this. The only reason I wasn't there was because I was speaking at the protest the next day, so I couldn't risk arrest. I thought, I'll just go and cover it. So I got a Boris bike. Literally went half a mile down the road to where they were and rode straight into a kettle. I stood there for, and that was a long night. I mean, that was 4 hours in a kettle, 2 hours on a bus in handcuffs, then banged up in a cell all night. And my wife didn't even get a phone call until 10:30 the following morning, so she'd heard nothing from me. She'd assumed I'd been arrested because the last text she got from me was always looking a bit hairy. I'm in a kettle, but she actually did not know where I was, couldn't get in touch with me, and no one communicated with her until 10:30 the following morning. Yeah, there was, people were getting into this, and there was, if you've never been arrested, you can't actually understand quite how traumatic it really is to find yourself as a free person who's not, I'm not a criminal, I've never done it, I've never so much as nicked a penny sweet, and I find myself actually in handcuffs, my possessions being taken from me, my fingerprints being taken, they swab me for DNA, and I'm banned up in a cell, I can't communicate with anybody, and I'm still thinking, this is supposed to be a free country? What crime have I committed? My crime is pointing out that there are some really unethical corporations profiting from public money, and that this is a moral contradiction. That's a crime. I would be surprised if it was as literal as that. But I do think people at that level operate a very different worldview than we do, and it's hard to translate it for people because it sounds so cynical. It's almost, because most people are actually quite moral and ethical, they almost find it like it's some sort of a scare story. It seems unbelievable. But you are dealing with a class of people here that view the world in a geopolitical way. They don't look at the world like we do, like my mate Sam. They are looking at huge, they are looking at billions of pounds. They're looking at corporate power. They're looking at political power, and the sacrificing of a story here and a story there. That small beer to them, because their core reason is extending that economic and political power. That's what they're there to do. That's the way they are viewing the world. We don't really matter to these people. We're just, they want us for labour. They need us to build the widgets. They need us to fight the wars. They need us to show up at 9 o'clock in the morning and leave at 5 o'clock at night. They need us not to, get too poor so that, we've got to waste some public money on people. So that's the way they're doing it. So yeah, I don't even think they would even need to have the conversation about, we'll give you the licence fee if you do this. It's a given. That's just the sea they swim in. Yeah, of course you do. If you want the licence fee, that's a given. And of course, I think lower down the chain, those conversations are probably a lot more real. I think the Jimmy Savile situation, for example. You know, we've got a situation there where we know that that show should have been released, that information was there, that people were aware that this was happening, and it was suppressed. You know, there was an editorial decision by George Ennis or Helen Bowden who said, we're not going to run this story. Instead, we're going to let flipping Alfie from EastEnders get up and tell everyone how brilliant Jimmy Savile was at Christmas. To be honest, that's on us. It's always on us. You know, the truth is we actually do have the power, and I think the biggest message that people really need to get drilled into their bones right now is we do have the power. We're not impotent. We are the majority of the people of not only the country, of the planet. You know, nothing works without us. If we all stopped down tools tomorrow and said, no, we're not coming back to work until you meet our demands, they have to. They've got no choice. So we have the power, but it's actually, you know, turning that power into a real power, not a theoretical power, is hard. And for some people are more, I think, it's easier to understand, you know, the disgrace of child abuse. Most people, that doesn't take any kind of intellectual engagement. You don't have to do any research. You just know it's bad, it's wrong. Most of us will know somebody, sadly, in our lives that have suffered it, and we could imagine how horrible it would be ourselves if we had to suffer it. So it resonates with people immediately, and they absolutely, you know, they go mental, and when they do, it demands a response. And so you've got a bit of bloodletting now going on at the BBC, where you know, they can sacrifice these guys now, you know, you've ruined it, guys, you've got to go to jail. Conversely, when you have what in real terms is a much bigger impact of the economic system, of the bailout, all of the people that are, you know, people that died, you know, 10,600 sick and disabled people died last year while going through these ATOS work capability assessments, and 3,000 of those died within 6 weeks of being told they were fit to work. You know, their last weeks of life, when they should have been coming to terms with the idea they were going to die, saying goodbye to their loved ones, getting their affairs in order, they were under the immense pressure of how are they going to pay the bills? Are we going to lose our home? You know, how are we going to eat? You know, all of these issues they should not be thinking about. They've got no voice. Yeah, and people are not galvanising behind them in insufficient numbers. Why? Because frankly, most of them don't even understand how this is going on. You know, there are so many, they can see all of these diverse symptoms, but you know, they're not able, and this is part of the BBC's failing right now, which is why we're asking them to cover all this stuff, is that they're not getting that all of these seemingly separate issues are part of one thing. They're part of an ideology. They're part of something called neoliberalism, which, whether you've ever heard of it or not, is actually the system we live in, which is absurd that most people don't even know they're living in a system, and if they think they are, they don't know what it's called. We're living in a neoliberal system, which creates, by its very design, these conflicts between a corporation creating profit, a government creating profit, and actually public interest. You know, us being able to make things, us being able to eat, us being able to access heating and water and shelter, to be able to get around or using a transport system that we can afford and that works. All of these issues that actually make a world, make a country. It's like that's actually an economy. Is how you organise those things. That's what economy means. And what we've got is not an economy. We've got a parasite sat on top of the economy, sucking all of the money that should be circulating and making all of this stuff work, just sucking it up into so some people are hideously wealthy, more wealthy than they need to be.